Welcome to Therapy, Tech, and Takeout. We're a therapist and a tech entrepreneur curious about the intersection of mental health and technology. And we're just trying to figure out where this is going to lead, right, Jackie? Where are we going with
Absolutely.
this?
It's
Yeah,
great to be back with you, Toni. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's been a little
Fantastic.
bit of a hiatus for us.
It has. It has. Is
Yeah.
your book out yet?
No, it's going to be out in November 2026. So we're in, they call it passes, where they goes to the copy editor and it goes back and forth, and we see, like, are the pages too long? So I'm actually getting to see what it's sort of gonna almost
That's so
look like on the
exciting.
page. There's some art in it already. It hasn't all been finalized, but I have like kind of a general rough idea of what the book looks like. So we're going through it. Do we like the order of things, and is anything going to be moved around? So it's kind of fun.
That's awesome. I cannot wait to check out your book. I have to give a plug for your blog as well on your website. I was reading one of the posts you had put up on Instagram or whatever the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love your blog. Everybody should subscribe to that. We'll put a link to it in our episode notes.
Thank you. I'd love that. I'm having guests come on that. I think that doing the show here with you has inspired me um, to really just seek out some more experts. And I'm curious about topics, and I can't write about every topic, or I could, but I'm not an expert. So I love being able to go and find experts and bring them and have them write articles. So we're doing lots of different topics on mental health and on therapy, and everyone's really doing like kind of informative pieces, like, here's a topic you might not know about, and let me share a little bit more about that, like nature and healing. And
Yeah.
what, I do somatic therapy. People are like, what is somatic therapy? So I love being
That was
able
the
to
one I
do
just
that.
read. I loved that one. Because, yeah, I was like, I've heard about it. And obviously, know that you practice it and stuff, but hadn't really gotten into it. And even I consider myself pretty well versed in a lot of those like grounding things, but there is a new tip in there about like looking at the corners of the room that I don't think I'd never heard of it, or it had never sunk in with me. And so I was like, oh, yay, brand new thing to try sometime.
Love being able to share tips that can help. So
Absolutely.
what's happening in your world? What's new?
Just got back from a trip to Tennessee. My oldest daughter got her white coat at the end of her second year of medical school, so that was exciting. We had a big family event all weekend, and it was a lot of fun to have everybody together. So that was really cool, and I'm just kind of getting caught up from that. There was a lot of driving because I had to take my dog up, and so, but yeah, so much fun. I can't
That
complain.
sounds it. Wow, that's really
Yeah.
huge. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
Wonderful.
you. It's exciting when the kids grow up.
It sure is.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you today about our topic. It's a little different than anything we've touched on before, but definitely has intersections. Today we're going to talk about AI and intimacy, and if how AI can help identify, but perhaps escalate kink or fantasy involvement and things like that, and what the studies are finding. And the thing that like jumped to my head as soon as I started reading this article, Toni, was I wonder how AI companies are going to think about this sort of thing in light of those new rulings that came out against the social media companies, where really that sort of like triggering that endorphin loop sort of, or dopamine hit
Right.
has really been critical in finding fault with those entities, and how it seems like this is kind of like that, but elevated to a whole different level.
Right, right. Good point. I mean, that the ruling is going to set us up for a road that might look very different. And that's hopeful, because it might look like more safeguards or more intentionality in how things are being put together, and maybe even more information for people who are, using AI and how they're using it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the idea that these AI companies can't really hide behind some of the rules that the social media company, or some of the laws that social media companies had, right? Where they're like, hey, we're not a producer of content. We're just, a town square to post things. And so we don't have any liability for the content. But AI is really generating output and that's content. And so I think that they're in a whole different, hopefully like easier to regulate, we'll see, world where they should be required to
Mhm.
think about some of these things about their design ahead of time.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
guess, time will tell how that all works out.
Well, as a other aside, I mean, I think it was just recently I'm slipping on that word.
Anthropomorphized
No,
or anthropomorphic.
anthropomorphic.
Yeah.
Yes, the company. Anthropomorphic, because I
Anthropic.
am thinking anthropic,
There we
because I am
go.
thinking about anthropomorphize because I'm thinking about this topic. But Anthropic said that they don't want their technology used for bombs and
Yeah.
wars and things like that. I think that they're being kind of strong armed and there's a fallout and issues with that. So it's like, well, who owns it and who gets to police it? Maybe that's another topic for another podcast, but that is going to intersect with some of the stuff that I think we're talking about, because in the end it is about who's going to decide what's helpful and what's not helpful, what's harmful really and what's not harmful. So that is going to come into play. All the restrictions or not having restrictions or guardrails on it is really going to set the stage for where this is going.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I found, and just so we'll drop the link to the article, but it's a New York Post article called "AI Sex Bots Can Fuel Your Kinks and Freaky Fantasies Faster Than a Human Partner," new study. But I mean, it makes sense, right? That there is this since there's no emotional processing involved on the AI side, that it
Mhm.
escalates and moves things along faster. What does that do? I think that there's a benefit to having a shame-free platform to discuss anything that's in your head, right? Which
For
AI kind of
sure.
gives people access to in their pocket.
For sure.
But I think that the idea that if it's not challenging you and there's no pushing for you to regulate within it and things like that. I mean, I think that that's really scary. And when you think about how hardwired sexuality and those things are into our animal brains,
Mhm.
it's pretty scary to think about.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And could be this reliance on this companionship or this intimacy that it's kind of a slippery slope that I think we didn't realize we were getting into this area of romance and sexuality that's AI generated or, kind of AI partners, because it was a little bit insidious. You start talking to your chatbot because it's non-judgmental and that feels good. It kind of creates some intimacy because you
Right.
can be vulnerable and you feel like you can say anything. And I feel like it's no wonder why we're here, you and I even having this conversation, that people are really connecting and open, and there's some upsides and there's some downsides, I think, to what's happening in this in right now.
100%. I think that, in general, I think we've had sort of a societal, at least, within my worldview and the scope of things I see day in, day out, a decline in emotional intelligence or in thinking and talking about emotional intelligence as a society. It's not that it doesn't happen, but when I was a kid, it seems like there were a lot, it was starting to be talked about and then it kind of tapered down, right? And so I think it's so interesting to think about those generations that are coming up where this is just the reality they have from the moment their brain, even before necessarily their brain is ready to process sexual stuff, access to everything. I mean, it's just kind of mind boggling to think how
Yeah.
that's going to rewire your desire
Yeah.
loop and
Yeah.
your ability to connect and your interest in connecting with people. If you have a frictionless experience over here with an AI that gives you what you
Yeah.
want and can predict that versus a person that's clumsier, and less straightforward, right? Because it's two people figuring something out. I think it's wild to think about how that could rewire our brains and how we think about things, for sure. How do you think about one of the other things I thought that was really interesting in this article was the idea of people having couples bringing in a third person via AI to their relationship. I thought that was interesting because it hadn't occurred to me before I read the article, but of course.
few things didn't occur to me before I read this article. It's a little eye-opening. Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
was like, oh,
couples using it together, yeah.
yeah, I was like,
It feels different. It
that
feels
feels
like
different. Yeah.
that feels
Because you're
different
still
than
emotionally connected to a person.
because yeah, there's still kind of an emotional connection. It feels like there's choice about that.
Right.
You have somebody else in the room who might limit you or want to explore with you versus kind of what you were talking about, like you can get fed it all at the same time, which
Yeah.
doesn't feel healthy having
Right.
kind of it all without having some vulnerability that feels like it's seen, felt, heard, and negotiated or
Yeah.
something. Like that feels like a process that leads to growth in a
Mhm.
relationship.
Yep.
And that doesn't have the opportunity to happen here. I mean, for people who are lonely, having a chatbot can mediate some of that loneliness. And that's really great, like to have someone who's non-judgmental. But I think it could lead to a reliance on that kind of relationship, and that person will miss out on the co-creation of a true relationship where
Yeah.
both people can grow together. Um, I don't know where I was going with that, but kind of that was the thought that came out of this, like just getting fed this. And I think
Right.
like a couple with a third party that's an AI bot that can look very different because they're still probably mediating their relationship, like right and
Yeah, you
negotiating.
have to still like your mind has to hold space for that there's another person here and that like you have to like there's boundaries
Hmm.
with that person, and like you said, it
Yeah.
has to have that like communication about and like consent and negotiation and all of
Hmm.
that stuff that you don't
Yeah.
have with an AI with a when it's just a person and an AI. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting and perhaps like, a real useful or valuable way of using this stuff too for
It could
people.
be.
Yeah,
Right. You want to hear like my thought of like what I really think is the worst part of all of
I would
this?
love to.
It's really the unrealistic expectations
Yeah.
that we will have people who are using this will have for other human beings
Yeah.
because they've experienced this non-judgmental, very open, here you can get to do whatever you want kind of scenario. I think that that really provides unrealistic expectations for what relationships look like in the real world. And if you don't get that, then there's no immediate gratification. So you're not going to work on it. You're going to look for somebody else. You're just going to keep moving
Yeah.
on, trying to find something that matches that. And if this feels or sounds familiar, I mean, I think this is kind of the case for against porn
Yeah.
for a lot of people that and like yeah, porn's your thing, not a problem there. However, one of
Right,
the
if it
arguments
crosses
for
that,
porn
yeah.
is that it can set up unrealistic expectations, and women certainly talk about that, feeling like they're not measuring up to that, feeling like their performance, they have to live up to that kind of performance, and who
Absolutely.
can. So I think that that's really my biggest concern. And it matches what we're talking about in social media and technology with people being fed images that look like perfection,
Right.
and unrealistic expectations. I mean, I think that that's one of the biggest issues. And then the other one is ethical and privacy concerns, because here people are sharing their deepest,
Right.
darkest secrets that they
Yeah.
don't want anyone to know. But like, who's got access to all this
Right.
data? It's out there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's wild to think about for sure,
Well,
and
would
how vulnerable, like, God forbid that information got out, especially if it were related, to children and things. I mean, it would be hard for anybody, but,
right.
if you think about kids and stuff, I mean, that's just really upsetting. I have a friend whose daughter was recorded doing something and it got spread around the school and how super damaging and hurtful and harmful that was
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
the old media space. Like I can't even
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
that in this new media
Yeah.
space as well. And I wonder too, like, because it's so easy and because it's accessible and it's there all the time, like we probably need to be teaching people, more about how to like set boundaries and identify and value the interpersonal relationships
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. Because it seems rife for encouraging undesirable behavior, for sure. Yeah. It's interesting. Do you remember it? Because it also is like, as it ties into the porn conversation, it also ties into that like edited images thing. And like, I remember sort of an early analog version of that was Jamie Lee Curtis when she did the cover of some magazine. I think it was her with no makeup and no photo retouching. And it was just like, this is who I am. This is what I look like in real life,
Right.
and then they showed like what they would have done to it to make it look different, like and it was
Yeah.
wild, because you were like, oh, she looks great. Like, or, and then you're like, but all those things I would never have noticed. Yeah, I get why. That's so harmful. So I remember being, at some age and seeing that comparison, and it was really quite shocking. And yeah, now it's like everything is kind of like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, the next kind of level of concerns, and not necessarily a lower level, maybe this is an even higher level of concern, is what you're talking about, giving people freedom to do things that they wouldn't normally do in real life that might be illegal,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like,
Or get them
because
even like
it's
feeding into that, and like
that it
if they
feeds
express
into
an
that.
interest in something like, whatever that's not illegal necessarily, but is borderline, and then it gets fed and fed and it
Hmm.
degenerates down. Perhaps I don't know how much
Right.
of that type of thing can be influenced versus not, but
Right.
yeah,
But acting it out might loosen people's inhibitions to
yeah,
actually move in the kind of that realm. We know, for example, people who abuse their partner verbally or physically, that it's going to escalate if it doesn't get stopped. There's a trajectory there that happens. So what happens with this kind of experiments that people might have that
yeah,
could escalate, and what happens when that threshold isn't enough to fill kind of like that desire or that need? Will people move to kind of the real thing,
yeah,
harming other people?
yeah. No,
Yeah.
100%. I
Yeah.
hadn't even really. I had thought, like, go to servers in other countries where it's not regulated, but like the real content exists also, and maybe that's easier to do.
Hmm.
Also, different
Yeah.
kind of
What
horrific.
and yeah, and are there guidelines? I don't know what the restrictions are on this, but are they
Yeah,
can you what if you could create your own character?
yeah,
Are there guide rails that say they only have to be adults? They
yeah.
must be adults.
Right.
You get what I'm saying here,
Yeah.
right?
No, 100%.
Right.
Like,
So it's yeah. Yeah. Did you get that sudden ick feeling? I did because the potential is there. I mean, if they could change images of
yeah.
people and kind of do
Right.
anything.
Anything they want. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Oh, I'm really like looking at you now, and like my heart is like, oh, Toni, why did you even say that? Why am I bringing up this topic?
No,
This is a
it's super
really
important. Yeah.
difficult topic to bring up. I don't, feels really uncomfortable.
It does. But, I think that just, to me, it says like it's important to talk about then, because if we're not talking about it,
Right.
like we're not even aware of it and able to, I don't think it's like super common pre AI days, that people were like, but there have always been people that are predatory towards other people and abuse other people and things like that. That's just part of society as far as I've
Right.
seen it. But like, it's concerning to see how this could push, or like, what if like you're a child, or like you're a 16-year-old kid and you're on here, like, are you forced to interact with adults? Or are they letting you interact with children? Or
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
like neither
yes.
one of those.
Yeah. We're getting into like real kind of icky stuff.
Yeah,
There's the objectification
yeah,
of people.
people. Yeah, wow.
Wow. That
Yeah,
can move into real life. I
real
mean,
harm.
real harm. So I don't know if we know. And the thing is that we don't know
Yeah,
because we don't have enough of the long range outlook on this issue because
right.
it's so new and it's a moving target. We don't know how it's going to affect the future.
Yeah.
Or,
Well, it
you
was
know, like,
interesting. I was watching a show over the weekend, and one of the characters, their partner had died. And so they were a tech person, and so they were interacting with like an AI, version of their partner, and like it was kind of keeping them from like moving forward in life, and while that's like not exactly this, but it is along those same, that emotional intimacy and things like
mhm.
that. And then you have it not from your actual partner, but from a version of your partner that like never pushes back and never has their own boundaries and those types of things. Gotta think that's gotta be unhealthy for our brains in the long run.
Yeah, because it sets up something that's not reality. As people, we are built to socialize and to be social because we needed to be. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
part of the evolution of our species. If we were little babies who were left in the middle of the, kind of the forest and no one took care of us, we would die. So
right.
we had to do the things to like connect.
Yeah,
And there's no actual person that you're connecting to on the other side. And the other thing is our nervous systems talk to each other.
yeah,
We just did that. I saw your
right,
face. I was like, oh my gosh, I know what I just kind of said
right.
to
That like,
Jackie.
yeah,
Right. And I know what that felt. So our nervous systems talk to each other and we can co-regulate how, so
right.
we
Instead of
can help
pushing more,
each.
you can ease off. Yeah, there's like it's a back and forth.
It's a back and forth and a give and a take, which is important because it leads to growth. I guess like that's kind of like the bottom line for me
Yeah,
is in terms of as human beings, you hope for growth in yourself, in relationships, and kind of movement forward. I think it could really like keep people stuck. It can provide a really great way to cope with loneliness. I mean, we live in a society where there's an epidemic in loneliness and
yeah.
isolation. We felt it during the COVID pandemic. It hasn't gone away. We're still kind of a society that is very lonely. And I don't think it's any coincidence that this use for AI came out of it, right?
Right. Yeah,
Because it
absolutely.
needed to. But a coping mechanism is just that. Like the hope is then you kind of are able to
Right.
move
Get past it.
to get past it. Yeah,
Yeah.
to move to something else. So I think that we can have a over reliance on this
Huh.
and that could change our human to human relationships in so many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was probably my favorite takeaway from all of this is that like the complications and the pushback of those human relationships are really what pushes us to grow. That act actively avoiding that is really doing yourself a disservice. But I also do think it exists now. It's out there. These
Yeah.
things are there. Like I don't think we can like stuff it back into Pandora's box completely. So I think it is important that people be conscious of,
Right.
their use and have conversations and try to, reorient how you're valuing those types of things. It might, like you said, there are plenty of cases where it's useful and helpful and can be a
Mhm.
crutch that's less harmful than other things could be. But over reliance and not pushing forward at after a certain point, it's just not useful and then becomes detrimental and maybe even really really gross. Let's hope not. But
Let's hope
yeah, and
not.
then think about your data and everything, and who knows what's happening to all of this stuff
Yeah.
and who owns it. And I mean, just the nightmare of all of that is a real scary thing to think about. That keeps me out of it. So hopefully hopefully thinking about those things will help other people
Mhm.
avoid putting too much
Mhm.
out there as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think we wanna balance, like, we don't wanna shame people. I
Right?
mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't wanna shame anyone who's going to I forget what the Replica or, like,
But
whatever
yeah.
some of the sites are where you can find a companion
Yeah.
like this. There's no shame there, and there's no judgment. People may want to experiment and try things out, but to what level are you relying on that versus having relationships outside of
Yeah.
that. Just like anything, we were talking about like food for the brain. You're getting too much of it, you're like, too soon,
Yep.
especially as children. You
Yeah.
can't absorb that. right? And I think the same thing with this. If we're only doing, if you're only doing one thing anyway, and it's to the exclusion of everything else, that's not healthy
That's
either.
not healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
No matter what
running,
it is, even if it's eating salad or something, right?
like, running is great, but running a marathon every day is not.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Eating a
Absolutely.
salad is great. Eating a salad for every meal every day is probably not
Probably not.
good. You're
Yeah.
not getting all your nutrients, right? So, so I think that's my takeaway is we still have to kind of hold space for like this with this grain of salt and really wait for the data to show us what kind of outcomes are we having with this. And I am really curious about what the guardrails are. What can people create? And
Yeah.
are there things they're not allowed to create? Are there
Yeah.
scenarios that are absolutely off limits? Because that would be really good to know.
Absolutely. What are the boundaries?
What
Let's
are the
bring some boundaries
boundaries?
back into the conversation, right?
That's right. That's right.
100%. Yeah. No, I like that. And I appreciate you taking the time to help me sort of break some of this down and think through it, cuz yeah, it's not as straightforward as you would maybe think about, like these things definitely are, they touch so many different aspects of us because it's so core to our humanity, I think. And so there's not like a formula that works for everybody, and I think it's just important to be aware and to find balance and to be curious about what you're doing and not shameful, and hopefully and understanding if you're interacting with AI because you're looking for a neutral space, like there's other places where you can have that neutral space also, and maybe trying to find a balance where you're not getting all of it from AI and you're balancing it with other therapeutic relationships or group relationships or whatever it is, but like something else as well, I would say.
Right. Love that. Love the balance. Yeah. It was great
Awesome.
talking to you about
Yeah,
this
so good
topic.
to catch up,
Yes.
Toni. I appreciate it, and I'm really excited for next week.
Yes. Yes. Next time will be
We're gonna
fun.
have an awesome guest for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking forward to that. All right.
All right, well, fantastic. Take care, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Take care. Talk
Bye-bye.
soon. Bye.